In the 230s BC, the Roman Republic has a geopolitical knife pointed at their heart, and that knife is the Po River Valley. This fertile, flat valley acts as the gateway into Italy, and Rome's lack of control over this critical region will result in two massive invasions within a 10-year period that both almost destroyed the Republic. In this video, I will show the importance of this river valley, the strategy Rome used to mitigate this weakness, and how Rome's slow response to this problem almost spelled their doom. The Po River Valley's geography acts as a gateway into Italy. Looking at it from space, it resembles a triangle, with its northern flank being the Alps, the Apennines to its south, and the Adriatic coast to the east. Its dominant feature is a flat, fertile, and unbroken plain, making it the largest chunk of arable land by a wide margin in the entire Mediterranean world. The agricultural goods produced in this region are able to support a massive population and generate copious amounts of wealth. The Po River itself adds to the value of this region, being the largest river in Italy and is navigable far inland, making transportation of bulk agricultural goods easier and less expensive. These facts alone are enough to draw the interest of an expansionist power like Rome, but the economic gain is just a bonus for controlling this area, since whoever controls the plain will also control the passes through the Alpine mountains. The Alps are a world-class geopolitical barrier. Their height and ruggedness make it very difficult for an army to cross with no opposition, and almost suicidal to attempt a crossing with an opposing force setting up in the narrow mountain passes. The same could not be said about the Po River Valley's southern border, the Apennine Mountains. In the 230s BC, this is Rome's northern border, and does offer some protection from invasion. But a motivated foe has several serviceable passes to choose from in the Apennine mountain range. This weakness has been taken advantage of many times over the last 200 years by the large Gallic tribes that inhabit the Po Valley. The Gauls are an aggressive warrior society and are one of the most successful Iron Age civilizations in history. Their drive to acquire good farmland and plunder has led to the expansion of their culture from the Iberian Peninsula all the way to Asia Minor. This success is due to the skill of their metalworkings, the use of hill forts to establish control of territory, and the ferocity of their warriors. A mass infantry charge of large, oftentimes naked men who have no regard for their personal safety has on numerous occasions caused enough psychological shock to break an army of more civilized men. Facing a Gallic army is one of the most intimidating things a Roman soldier can ever experience. The Gauls' control over the Po River Valley and its fertile soil has caused their population to grow very large, what makes their ease of access to Roman lands all the more threatening. Luckily for Rome, the Gauls are not united. There are several tribes that occupy the Po that the Romans can play off each other, but even fighting one of these tribes on its own can be dangerous, something that Rome has experienced on many occasions. For Rome, having a large group of aggressive people with easy access to their heartland is unacceptable. Rome's long-term strategy towards the Gauls in the Po River Valley isn't just subjugation, but extermination and replacement. This strategy is partly driven by xenophobia, but mostly by fear, because in 296 BC, a Gallic tribe known as the Senones crushed a Roman army and sacked and occupied Rome for 8 months, only leaving after being paid off and hearing that their lands were being raided in their absence. Partly because of this embarrassment, and partly because of the strategic importance of their land, in 284 BC, the Romans defeated the Senones and drove them out of their territory, and cemented their conquest by setting up the fortified colony of Senna in the area. These actions effectively cut Gallic access off to the only Apennine pass from the Po River Valley to Rome's heartland of Latium. By doing this, Rome is essentially funneling all future Gallic invasions through Etruria. The hilly landscape of Etruria and its non-Roman population essentially makes this a buffer region between Rome and the Gauls. This takeover of Senone lands came at a price, since it alarmed the Gallic tribes known as the Boii. The Boii were worried of the threat Rome posed to them now that they shared a border on the flat, easily traversed lands of the Po Valley. To combat this threat, they formed an alliance with the Etruscans and the remnants of the Senones, and in 283 BC, this coalition was crushed by Rome on the shores of Lake Vadimum. This show of power by the Romans shocked the Gauls of the Po into submission, and for the next half a century, Rome's northern frontier remained quiet. This peace became strained in the 230s BC, when it appears that a peace faction and a war with Rome faction formed within the Boii. In 238 BC, the Boii king sided with the war faction and secretly invited an Alpine Gallic tribe to join him in attacking Rome. The peace faction was untrusting of their would-be allies, and wanting to maintain the status quo with Rome, fought a battle against their king and the Alpine tribe, resulting in the death of their king and the death of the Alpine leader. Rome had sent their legions to the border in preparation for this invasion, but seeing what had happened, promptly marched their legions back to Rome. After this close call, the frontier again became quiet until 232 BC. The Roman Republic had up until this point held the conquered lands of the Senones as public land, with the exception of a few colonies. However, Rome now decided to divide up the land and reward it to Roman citizens to alleviate poverty at home and establish a larger Roman presence in the Po Valley. The Boii, seeing this, realized that it was no longer Rome's intention to subjugate them, but to wipe them out and replace them with Romans and Latins. With this realization, the support for the peace with Rome party evaporated within the Boii. The Boii, knowing that their chances of defeating Rome alone were small, formed a coalition with the Insubres, another powerful Gallic tribe of the Po Valley, who, like the Boii, were unnerved by the settling of Romans so close to their territory. These tribes used their connections to their cultural cousins on the other side of the Alps and recruited a large group of Gallic mercenaries to join them. These forces combined in the spring of 225 BC to form a massive Gallic army. Unlike in 238 BC, the Romans were completely unaware of the plan to invade Italy until the Gauls had already started mobilizing. Rome had already sent one of their consular armies to fight in Sardinia, leaving just one station in the Italian peninsula. Rome ordered its subjugated allied population to mobilize their forces and march their consular army of 50,000 men up the pass towards Senna to prevent the Gauls from marching directly into Latium. The Roman leadership also used their diplomatic connections with a non-Gallic tribe known as the Veneti to attack the Gauls while the men were away. This forced the Boii and the Insubres to leave some of their forces behind to defend their lands. But even so, the Gauls had 50,000 infantry and 20,000 cavalry ready for the invasion. The Gauls marched their army over one of the many northern Apennine passes and descended into Etruria. The Roman strategy to funnel them into Etruria had the desired effect on the Gallic army, who was slowed by the hilly terrain and their looting of the countryside as they made their way towards Rome. This gave time for the consular army to be recalled from Sardinia, as well as the other one to quickly make its way back over the Apennines. The Gauls came within 3 days' march of Rome until they're confronted with a small Roman army stationed on the border with Etruria. This army was smashed with over 6,000 Romans killed, and after the battle the Gauls were made aware by the captives they had taken that the large consular army was heading their way over the Apennines. The Gallic leadership, seeing the amount of loot they had already acquired, decided it would be wise to head back to their bases across the northern Apennines and deposit their winnings. This was a huge strategic blunder, since the only thing standing between them and Rome was one consular army who they outnumbered. This was their best chance to decisively defeat Rome, since if they left Italy and returned, they would be faced with hundreds of thousands of mobilized Italian soldiers ready for them. This bad decision may have just saved the Republic. The next day, the Gauls broke camp and started marching west before heading north up the Italian coastline, with the consular army hot on their heels. About this time, the second consular army landed at Pisa and started marching south along the coast, directly on a closing course with the Gauls. As the Gauls snaked their way up the coast, they marched up a narrow strip of land with a mountain on one side and the sea on the other, before they were confronted with the Roman consular army marching south from Pisa. They quickly realized that they had been caught in a pincer, and their only way out was defeating both Roman armies. At this time, we have to take a step back and examine the psychology of pre-modern warfare. It is very hard to kill a man with a shield when he's facing you. For this reason, most battles saw mild to moderate casualties until one side panicked and were slaughtered as they turned their backs and fled. With this fact in mind, let's examine the Gallic position. They were surrounded with nowhere to run. Their soldiers know that their only chance to survive is to stand their ground and fight, while the Roman soldiers have the option to flee. So ironically for the Romans, gaining such a superior tactical advantage over their foe may have just put them at a disadvantage. For this reason, and the renowned valor of the Gallic warriors, when Rome attacked the two Gallic lines facing them, the battle seemed to be very much in doubt. That was until a Roman cavalry and light infantry detachment was able to flank the Gauls from the hills and massacred 50,000 of them. After this battle, the Romans devoted their entire attention to subjugating the Gauls in the Po Valley. For the next several years, Roman campaigned in Cisalpine Gaul until they completely subjugated the population and set up Roman colonies in the area. This came at a cost, since the Republic of Carthage took advantage of Rome's attention being on their northern frontier and grew a massive empire in the Iberian Peninsula with the goal of gaining resources they needed to defeat the Romans. On my next video, I will discuss these Carthaginian gains, the strategy they used to invade Rome, and how they took advantage of Rome not completely driving out the Gauls, allowing them to use the Po River Valley to invade Roman Italy.